Wait for it. Wait for it. And we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby Chaos Coordinator, and one Chief Shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit. Oh, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunctions. Without further ado, clearly we are starting out the first episode of season 6 with a doozy where I walk all over my own words and don't read what I wrote. So there you go. You're welcome, people. Now you can send me all the letters about how I messed it up. And obviously, this is a Kickstarter episode. Those are always time sensitive. And so we had to scramble to fit Darrin in when he asked. This was not originally slotted to be the episode that it is, and that's okay because we love Kickstarters. We love supporting independent content creators outside of the Amazon ecosystem. And so because of that, that meant that my regular co-hosts, Jana, Stabby, and Nick couldn't make it on account of we're recording it outside of the normal window, so they are doing work things. Imagine that, having to have a day job and stuff. How rude.
Yeah.
So, Darrin, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
Yeah, I'm Darrin Drader. I've been a game designer in the industry for about 25 years now. Actually, I'll be going on 26 here pretty soon. I have worked for Wizards of the Coast. I have done, so I was working under their roof, but not for R&D. Although I was doing RPG R&D freelance for them while I was there, and for a while afterward. I freelanced for Paizo, Mongoose Publishing, Legendary Games, Kobold Press, basically most major companies I've done some kind of work for over the years. More recently, I've started up my own publishing company called Darrin Drader Designs, or Triple D for short, which we are currently using to publish the Daring and Dread 5e campaign setting. We are also doing the standalone 5e game, which is called Last Fleet to Vega. And we're also doing the space opera, another space opera, two of them, setting for 5e, Reign of Discordia, which is actually the second edition. First edition was published by Gunmetal Games back in 2008, and I wrote that one as well. So it's basically my own little publishing house where I create games that are important to me. And currently working on Apocalypse, or Apocalypse 5e, which we're kickstarting. But we'll get to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So why 5e and not some of the other systems that are out there, or the OSR system?
Okay, here's why. First of all, so I started designing with 3.5 professionally. I mean, there's some non-professional, non-published stuff that I did for 2e, but I'm not even counting that. And when we got to the end of 3.5, I remember there was kind of this feeling of burnout with a lot of people who were working on the game, just because it was, it was just so, there's so many things wrong with it. The math was broken. First of all, the actual pacing of play was once described as half an hour of fun condensed into 4 hours. They tried to do too much with it, and it became kind of just not as fun. It's like a lot of people at that point were going back to the OSR stuff, and I have done some OSR projects. I actually really liked OSR, but when 5e came out, well, before 5e came out, and we won't even talk about 4e because that never happened. But before 5e came out, at the end of 3.5, it's like, okay, if I was going to take 3.5 and change it to fit my design philosophies, it would end up looking almost exactly like 5e. The only major thing that they did in that, in 5e that I wouldn't have done, Not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a great mechanic, but it's the advantage disadvantage system. And it's simply because I didn't think about it. So um, basically, what it comes down to is, for the most part, 5e aligns with my design philosophy better than OSR does, better than Pathfinder does, or pretty much any other game system. And I would rather take the 5e engine and make it fit like another genre than, say, go to another system like, Savage Worlds or, whatever else. I like the way the system plays. I just want to be able to take that and do X with it.
So I've played, my first experience with gaming was the 3.5. That didn't last very long. There was, because I was in the military, they just assumed I had certain political beliefs and kicked me out of the group when they found out I was a veteran. So I got exactly 3 sessions at the table. And then I'm like, well, screw these hippies, right? Not there's anything wrong with hippies. It was just, growing up in a military family, commie and hippie were like cuss words growing up in the 80s. Like, that was the worst thing. Like, you'd start fights in the playground if you called somebody that. And especially in military communities. And so, like, I just kind of walked away from it. And then I started playing 2E, and then OSR when the Jason Onspach and Nick Cole invited me to play with James Ward. And I actually find, and then I've tried after that, I tried some 5e. I find the OSR stuff easier, for me at least, to conceptualize the rules than the 5e, especially if you're like DMing. I actually felt like the 5e got more complicated. And so for me, I don't know. I've heard that complaint that it's easier for the players and harder for the DM. And have you found that to be true, or is it maybe with my head injury, was it just easier because that's what I learned?
Well, first of all, I think that OSR is very easy. I mean, that's what I grew up playing, right?
Right.
So it is easy, but there's things that it doesn't do.
Okay.
And there's things it doesn't do that 5e does. So while the gameplay is, the pace is nice and fast with OSR, and the mechanics are simple, there's a lot of other things that are just kind of a little oddball with it. I've actually been playing an Eric Mona's 2E game. We're going to be doing that tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact. Basically every edition that they put out, they're trying to fix the problems with the edition before. So going back to 1E, 2E, it is simpler, it is faster, but you're basically re-engaging with all of the deficiencies those editions had.
Okay. I think some of it's preference.
Oh, sure.
Like
Absolutely.
Do you want crunchy or do you want theater of the mind? Are you using miniatures? And I know all of that matters. I know enough to know that I don't know all the answers, so I go with what's simple. But no, I just was curious from your end. I know there was some concern with the 5e open license a couple years ago, which a lot of the smaller companies were scrambling to make their own systems and get.
Oh my God, that was a nightmare, and I was one of the people who was scrambling to make my own system. So yeah,
so I just wondered. I don't know how that stands now. I was just curious what made you say 5e. I know it's got a loyal fan base.
It's got a huge fan base. That's the other reason, which is just sales.
Oh, absolutely. And generally speaking, in the later systems, you can always, if you know what you're doing, and I don't, but I know I've got friends I can ask, you can always pair it backwards. But so, I mean, you can convert pretty easily if you know how to do it, is what I'm told. Okay, that's an interesting. Are you going to go forward because there's talk about 6.0 or 6th edition coming out, or what did they say? They also, I've seen it called 5.5. If they do a new edition, are you going to move forward with the times, or you think you'll stick around with the 5e?
Well, so 5.5 has been out now for about a year.
Okay.
And what I've done, I'm actually moving more towards standalone games than, just like, I'm kind of moving away from needing the D&D books and just, you've got this one book and this is what you need. But that said, with one exception, I am using everything from 5.5.
Okay. Yeah, it's depends on how in depth you want to get it. It can get really expensive because you got to buy all the books, or you can buy the core rule book and make your own world and just have fun. That's the beauty of it. You can play it your way. Wow, that was almost like a Burger King commercial. So before we get started any deeper, we do got to do the religion questions before I forget. So are you ready for this?
I believe so.
All right. So Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Okay, so for me, it's kind of a toss-up between Star Wars and Star Trek. I enjoyed Firefly, but that's just so far in the past and so little of it that no. Star Wars has been a part of my life since I was 4 years old. Star Trek has been a part of my life since I was 9 years old. I think that in terms of having a dynamic and interesting universe, Star Trek edges out Star Wars by just a little bit. And the reason I say that is because Star Wars kind of comes down to a lot of mysticism that really just boils down to good versus evil, black versus white. It's kind of a two-dimensional type of setting. And Star Trek, sure, they've got their villains, but they don't have that. They've got much more complexity and, maturity that's kind of absent in Star Wars.
That's fair. All right. And because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Wheel of Time, Game of Thrones, or Chronicles of Narnia?
So let's see. Wheel of Time never grabbed me. Game of Thrones, I actively hate. And the other one is Narnia.
Yeah.
Never got into it. So for me, it's Lord of the Rings.
All right. So why do you actively hate that one particular? Lord of the Rings is a good answer. We had that on the original list, but everyone said it, so it kind of was unfair. So we had to take it off the list to get the other one's breathing room,
I could add Dragonlance of Forgotten Realms. But so why do I actively hate Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
It's basically because I enjoy heroic fantasy. I want my fantasy to be heroic. I find Game of Thrones to be the opposite of heroic. The characters are unlikable. The world is so dark as to be unsalvageable. And really, you get far enough into it and you just want you're like, everybody should just die. This is terrible. That plus, I'm not a prude, but just the sheer gratuitous amount of sex and perversion in Game of Thrones turns me off. So basically, in almost every way, I can't stand Game of Thrones. And of all the characters, and I've watched enough of it, of all the characters, there's only one character I even like, and that would be the Hound.
Why'd you like the Hound?
He was a bastard, but he was a good bastard.
Okay. That's a good reason. Okay. So one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions. And thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, we do bring that back every week to these episodes. And we're going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
So that's an interesting question. Did you know that that the Tyrannosaurus Rex is closer in time to the iPhone than it is to the Stegosaurus?
I did not know that.
It's true. But I'm going to have to go with Tyrannosaurus Rex. Small arms, big mouth, apex predator. Gotta love it.
But not the Stegosaurus? It just kind of looks cool?
They look cool. They look cool, and they were really early on. So I think they're cool, too. Triceratops are cool, too.
Do you ever use dinosaurs in your games?
I don't think I ever have, to be honest with you.
I
Um,
know some of the
I,
OG stuff, it was big like that. Was you'd run into dinosaurs.
I probably will at some point in the future. Right now, I'm actually running a streaming game of Temple of Elemental Evil. And when that one wraps, I'm running a 5e version of Temple of Elemental Evil. When that one wraps, I've actually got the 5e version of Isle of Dread. And I was thinking about doing that one next. And there are definitely dinosaurs in Isle of Dread. So I don't think I have used dinosaurs in the past, but I certainly would not be opposed to using them in the future.
And so when he says he streams, that is over on Twitch. We will link to that in the show notes. So if you ever want to hop over, those generally are recorded live. They are there to watch afterwards, but they don't stay forever. I don't know how long they keep them there. But you were telling me in the pre-show that they're not permanently stored there. So
yeah, Twitch usually has like one or two of mine that are still there, but all that stuff ends up getting simulcast to YouTube. So if you're wanting to watch my older shows, you can do that. You just go to my YouTube channel. I've got the Fallout Pacific Northwest using the Modifius system. I did like 2 years of that. That's up. I've got all of the Temple of Elemental Evil up. I've got at least up to where we're at right now, which is level 2. We've been at it for more than a year, for actually close to 2 years now, and they're on dungeon level 2. So that's been going for a while. Odyssey, the Dragon Lords is up there as well. So, and we do live. Sorry, go ahead.
I say, are you the dungeon master or are you the player in the system?
I'm the DM.
Do you prefer it that way, or does it just sort of work out that way?
I prefer it that way. I have been a full-time DM ever since I was about 16 years old. I started out as like everybody else does as a player, and when I couldn't find a group, I ended up creating a group and I would run the game, and it just kind of stuck. It kind of went from that to designing. So, so yeah, I like running the games.
Okay, so obviously, like we talked to you when you had your Omega Force books come out. So that episode is like 409, I believe, dear listener. That's season 4, so you can check that out, where we talked about your nerdy origins in general. So I want to kind of focus on your gaming experience. So how did you develop your addiction to dice? Like, where did that come for you?
All right, so when I was about 9 or 10, something like that, I come from Pullman, Washington. That's actually where I live now, as a matter of fact. But I lived in Pullman, Washington, where we did not have a Toys R Us. And one day we were visiting Spokane, Washington, that does have a Toys R Us. And my mom was like, "Hey, you can go and get yourself anything here as long as it's affordable." And I'm looking around, and I'm kind of at that age where I've outgrown a lot of toys. So I wasn't looking at Star Wars figures or GI Joes. I was looking more at books and games and things like that. And I'd heard about this game called Dungeons and Dragons. Didn't know much about it though. So I saw the red box with the Elmore art. I saw that there, and I was like, I want that. And then there's also some modules that were there. So there's also B4, the Lost City was there. And I was like, I want that too. So my mom bought them for me. And then I brought them home. And I couldn't make heads or tails out of what you're supposed to do in this game. I think it really could have, if they're going to improve that edition a little bit, it would be to give people a better idea of, this is what we're doing type of thing. So I ended up reading it and getting really confused and putting it in my closet and forgetting about it. And then one of my friends who had moved away a few years previously came and was visiting with his mother, and he ended up spending the weekend with me. So we were hanging out, and we're like, oh, what are we going to do? What is there to do? And I think I was like 11 years old at the time. And, I lived out in the country outside of Pullman on a little farm. Actually, it's a big farm, but we didn't own it. The university owned it. And the TV wasn't much. We got ABC, NBC, and CBS, and they were all kind of snowy. because we are picking it up with the rabbit ears. So TV wasn't really happening. We weren't really that interested in watching movies or anything like that. So he's like bored and going through my closet, and all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, you've got D&D," and I'm like, "Yeah." Like, do you know how to play it? I've never played it. I bought it and didn't know what to do with it. So he introduces me to D&D, and it was kind of weird because it's like a one-on-one session as opposed to a group. But we literally ended up putting in about 12 hours playing it over the course of 2 days. And after that, at that point, I wanted more. I was hooked. Like this is something that was made for me. I love this, So at that point, I was looking for a group, and I had a hard time finding people. Few people I did find seemed a little bit crazy. So I eventually ended up starting my own group, which is like somewhere around 16 years of age. People would go out to my house. It was a Friday thing, and we started with Dungeon Adventures, from Dungeon Magazine, and just went from there. And other than a few years of my life where I was busy, working a job and just didn't have time for it, I've been gaming ever since.
Were there any lags where you took breaks, or was it nonstop for you, like heads of, fast forward through it once you got started?
I think the only real break that I took was between 96 and 98. And that's because during that time I was in sales. So I was selling computers, and then when the computer store went under, I was selling mattresses. And then actually, when I got to selling mattresses, believe it or not, there was a group of people who were interested in gaming, who were salesmen, and so that ended up being kind of the end of my break. So it was really just when I was selling computers that I wasn't really gaming.
Ironically, you had mentioned mattress selling today of all days. Are you familiar with the Fat Electrician?
No.
So he is a Global War on Terror, so GWOT veteran, but he also dives into history. He finds cool people who are kind of forgotten by history or overshadowed, and he does a whole bunch of deep dives on historic figures. But he also has a separate channel where he just dives into like the same kind of concepts, but almost conspiracy theories. And he just released a video about the conspiracy theory that Mattress Firm is a money laundering operation, because there are so many of them so close together that it's like makes no sense. I mean, how many people are buying that many mattresses that often? I just thought it was funny that you mentioned that on the day those videos launched.
You know what? I think that I shouldn't make any comments with Mattress Firm because they had bought up a company I was working for. So I've actually been employed by them. It was brief. I don't have anything good to say about them, and that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I just thought the timing was more what I was laughing at, because it got caught up in, how do I say this politely, because we don't want to get it censored. There were some of the conspiracy theories were that they were trafficking people and drugs. And so when they did the deep dive, they came away with, no, probably just money laundering. And so I thought the timing just struck me as a little bit humorous.
So I will say this, okay? Having worked for them, I do not believe that any of that would be true.
I don't either. I just think conspiracies are fun because you can point at the crazies, right?
Uh-huh.
So, okay. So I'm assuming you're about the same age as me. I'm in my 40s. So you would have been a kid when the whole, D&D is the devil stuff was going on.
Oh, yeah.
Did that impact your ability to play, to find tables, to get your parents to okay it, or no?
It had no effect whatsoever. So my mother wasn't aware of all of that to begin with.
Okay.
She was not a super religious person, and neither am I. And the people that I knew kind of had this attitude that, oh, hey, they play D&D and it's got a bad rap. And so what do I see my kid doing? I see him reading. I see him doing math. It's actually something that kind of promotes intelligence, and that's a good thing. So kind of everybody in my circle came to the same conclusion, which was that the Satanic Panic stuff was a load of BS.
Oh, I agree. I just thought it was, I was curious how that impacted, because when that was going on, I wasn't even really that aware that
Mm-hmm.
D&D was a thing. I wondered, mostly because you're in the Pacific Northwest, you're a little bit more socially liberal in that region, generically speaking, than say the Southeast where I live.
Uh-huh.
And so I wonder if the Bible Belt reacted differently than where you were, and that was part of it too. But okay.
Probably. Now,
Have you tried?
I will say this. The whole satanic association with D&D for me at that age actually increased the allure.
I can see that. I also remember when was it Nancy Reagan was saying that the music was making people go crazy, or something about if you played the records backwards, the devil would talk to you. So I mean, there's a lot of nonsense going on back in the 80s.
Well, it's kind of funny because the same is true for Iron Maiden. They kept pointing to Iron Maiden's album covers and saying, "Oh, look at this, it's satanic," and I'm like, "Oh, I think I need to listen to them."
So, from a gaming philosophy, and then we're going to transition here in just a minute to the specific property that brought us here. But you've played lots of systems with lots of tables. What is your philosophy on player death? Are you one of those ones who doesn't want to ever kill your players? Or do you take the James Ward approach where I don't kill players, players kill players? Or like, how do you handle that in your personal philosophy?
So I think that I'm closer to James Ward. I don't kill players, players kill players.
Okay.
And it's such a rare thing anyway in an RPG for a player to actually die, because there's so many ways to save them. This is particularly true for 5e, where you get so many death saves that odds are that you're going to stabilize before you die. But I don't think there's anything really satisfying as a DM in killing a player, because not killing a player character. You kill the player, it's murder. Anyway,
Well, in the South, he had it coming as an acceptable defense. He just needed killing.
Yeah. So no, I'm really more interested in keeping them alive so that we can explore the character, because you kill them off, and what are you going to do? The player is going to go off, they're going to build a new character, and then they're back in your game, right? Because otherwise you lose a player, and that sucks. So it's more fun to me to keep them alive.
That's where you get the fun joke about adding Junior to the
Yep.
end of the character sheet. You killed my father, prepare to die, and you can quote Princess Bride. So that's always a win.
Now, I did have one guy, and this is a campaign that I ran quite a while ago, but his name is Rob. And Rob was just a super unlucky roller. And his character was climbing up the side of a building, missed his climb check, fell, took enough hit point damage to die, and nobody went and rushed to save him. So that's actually the last character death that I remember happening in one of my games. Otherwise, it's really my job as a DM to lose to the players slowly and convincingly.
Okay, so for you, you're more about the narrative than the mechanics, so to speak. Now, do you have a preference for theater of the mind versus some of the miniatures and the set terrains and all that?
Well, I love minis, and given that I do all of my gaming now online with the online tables, I still prefer to have the virtual minis on the tabletop as opposed to theater of mind. And there are times when you don't need it. It's like you've got the whole party and they're up against one creature. Well, in that case, you can do the whole thing theater of the mind if you don't want to bother with the map. But for the most part, I do use the map and the online tabletop, whether it's needed or not.
Yeah, I think it can help. I mean, I don't think you need to do it to the extent like Warhammer does, where like moving it makes like that's part of the gameplay. But I do think, just as a general rule, it helps, I think, some players visualize.
Mm-hmm.
to have it like what's around you, what can you see. It helps that by seeing that helps them kind of think of ideas of what to do next. So I think there's a middle ground where possible, but when you're doing that, I admire the people that go all out and build the model terrains. That's not me. I don't have that kind of skill set.
Yeah, Steve Picorni is the guy who does. He actually built. Well, he sells that stuff. I forget what his the brand is, but they've got a Netflix special about him. And I've been Facebook friends with him for a long time, and I actually met up with him at GaryCon. And I think he does some incredible stuff. And I could never put that much time into it, though. Just building it. It's like how do you keep what's beyond the next door secret from your players? Are you covering the thing up with a blanket, or how does this work even?
That is a little bit easier to do, I think, digitally, but then you're not building anything. You're just using virtual images, so it's a little bit different.
Exactly.
But then you got to be tech savvy, and I am not.
I'm tech savvy. I do that. That's part of what we do. I turn on the fog of war, and then as they explore, you just you eliminate the fog of war, and they see what's in the next area.
Well, we want to bring you here, obviously, to talk about the Kickstarter. So we're going to pause for a moment. For the sponsor of this episode is your Kickstarter, and I'm going to show the video that is on the Kickstarter page, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about it. So I'm going to hit that video real quick.
Cool.
Humanity didn't collapse, it burned. Fire, radiation, bioweapons, rogue AIs. Centuries of chaos tore civilization apart and rebuilt the planet in poison and steel. From the ashes rose the survivors, mutants, scavengers, degenerates, warlords, machine hybrids, and relic hunters, each fighting to stay alive in the radioactive ruins of North America. This is their world. Welcome to Apocalypse, a complete standalone tabletop role-playing game built on the foundations of 5e and redesigned from the ground up for post-nuclear adventure. No other rulebooks, no conversion, no guesswork, everything you need to run a brutal, high-octane campaign straight out of the book. If you love Gamma World, Fallout, The Wasteland, or Wild Gonzo post-apocalyptic chaos, this is your next game. Apocalypse, the old world is dead. Your adventure begins now.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. And now you saw a little bit about the game that brought us here. And I'm going to throw up on the screen, or put up on the screen. It's throw up sounds a little wrong. The image from the Kickstarter that is the core image for the game. But so first, obviously, there's some knowns of 5e. It would take too much time, I think, to dive into the 5e system. Suffice it to say, it's a D20 system, much like your experience with some changes over the years. I don't want to spend too long diving into summarizing 5e. So instead, what can you? Are you using all of the mechanics, or are you only using part of them?
Okay, well, if you use all of the mechanics, then you're using magic, and there's no magic in this. So I'm using I'm basically using the 5e engine. The character classes, I'm not using those. I'm using some of their abilities. Now, the thing is that the way that I'm setting this up, you actually build your own character class as you level. So you've got your play tiers, levels 1 through 4, and then 7 through, I forget what the next one is. And anyway, there's 4 tiers. And the class abilities are organized by tier. So if you're tier 1, if it says you get a class ability, you go pick a class ability. And then you do pick a subclass. So that's how it's different than 5e, or at least one of the ways that it's different than regular 5e. Gosh, I forgot what your question was now.
So how much of the 5e are you using for this? Do they have to have the 5e player handbook to play?
Okay. The combat system is the same. The basic rules are the same. You do not need to have the player handbook. It's all included in the in the core book here. So So yeah, I mean, if you've got this book, it is compatible with stuff. You know, like say you want to take a monster from the monster manual or from a third party book and put that into this game, you can do that. But as far as needing any book from Wizards of the Coast, you do not.
Okay. So you said there's no magic. Is there technology? Because you mentioned Gamma World in that video as an example, and Fallout. And I'm familiar with both of those. Are there relic technologies that are available? So, you know, maybe guns if they can find ammunition, plasma pistols, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. You can get anything from you know, from ancient tech all the way up to future tech.
So where is this set at in the post-apocalyptic world?
The United States. It's the continental United States or the American wasteland.
In any specific place in America, or can they go anywhere?
They can go anywhere. I've broken down the United States into, I want to say, about 20 distinct areas.
Okay.
And each of those areas is going to be covered in the Gazetteer.
Okay. And then are there maps involved, or are they using like how does that work for players that are playing the game? Does the book have some maps in it?
The book is going to have, at the very least, the map of the American wastelands, which it's actually on the Kickstarter page. If you want to or are able to bring that up. There we are. Now I haven't taken this yet and broken it down by region. And a lot of the names there are like the actual names of those places, and those are going to be changed before we hit the final version, so that it's going to be more post-apocalyptic. You know, for example, when I was doing the Nuclear Sunset, which was an OSR post-apocalyptic setting, my hometown, because you always got to post-apocalyptize your own hometown, right? So I live in Pullman, Washington, which is the home of Washington State University, and by the time, you know, the bombs fell and people like repopulate the area and stuff, they just had an incomplete sign of Washington State University to say this is what this place is called. So people referred to it as Wastat Uni. There's going to be a lot of that type of thing as far as, you know, renaming. But, you know, you'll notice that DC is a big crater. There's going to be radioactive areas and all kinds of fun stuff. Ruined city.
That is the fun of a post-apoc, is you can take existing like sports teams or college mascots. Like I wrote one in the I want to say it was in Iowa, Hush Rangers. And they thought Pistol Pete was a god, which is a college mascot. And so you can do that. And I did that for a short story that I think Fanning Goat Games put out, or was going to. It fell through, and I self-published it because the publisher generously let me. But that is one of the fun things about a post-apocalyptic kind of environment, is you can take existing stuff here, and if you're creative as a player or a DM, you can incorporate that in without breaking the system, because cultures are going to shift and ebb and flow, and without mass communication, like go to any region and they're going to be distinct cultures again, much like it was during the founding, because communication and travel is going to be limited. Now, speaking of, are vehicles around, like what is communication and travel across the system going to look like?
So it's going to be regional, like you said. There are going to be some large organizations where you're going to find them pretty much wherever you go, but they're going to be kind of hard to find. Going to be a little bit Fallout-esque in that manner. But communication from like one region to another, it's either through trade, or it might be through somebody who's got a ham radio and happens to connect with somebody else with a ham radio who is elsewhere. You know, means of mass communication don't really exist. Television stations don't really exist. Radio stations might, but they're going to be regional. And then, like I said, there's going to be trade, which is going to be one of the big ways that people from one area find out about people from another area. And and also how they hear like horror stories of people from 3 areas over, because they're getting everything secondhand by that point.
So, do you cover what the cause of the apocalypse was in this setting?
It was a nuclear war.
Okay.
I mean, if you're asking what the political cause was, I'm choosing not to get into that, as is consistent with, I would say, most post-apocalyptic fiction.
I know Fallout got into it, but it was set in a stylized 1950s with nuclear stuff. And so, they stuck with what the enemy would have been in the 50s or the 40s. So, I mean, it was like obviously the commies. But I do think if you're going to go forward at all, there's lots of room for anything. I mean, heck, if you look at have you ever seen the list of where all the nukes are?
In the real world?
Yes.
No.
So there's a list by country, what country has so many nukes. The reason I mentioned that is on that list is one person named John, who just has a nuke for some reason. Just a one solo dude among all the other countries. And I point that out to say, all it takes is one random actor to start stuff going.
Wow.
And then, some of these systems are automated where, once the lead starts flying, they respond in turn by rote. And that's why you got that War Games movie in the 80s, The Only Way to Win is Not to Play.
Yep.
And so you don't even necessarily need political actors to trigger it. I mean, are you familiar with World War I history? The Black Hand, one small political organization triggered all those reactions and counter reactions by one, gunshot. So I mean, you don't even really need to, just because entangled alliances can create all kinds of things with just a crazy, random actor. Now, do you cover where the bombs actually land?
To an extent. There is a reason that DC is just a big crater. No, I haven't.
What you're saying is I can finally afford real estate there.
Yeah. If you like water.
Wait. So DC was a swamp. So does it go back to being a swamp, or does the crater imply that it's something else?
The crater implies that the nuke blew up what is there, connecting the swamp with the ocean, which flooded the entire thing.
Interesting. So because it's nuclear, did any of the EMP effect happen in this setting?
Absolutely. Would have to.
So does that mean that electronics aren't going to work in this one? Are you almost going backwards in time tech-wise?
So I think that's kind of it's an interesting question, because there is kind of this thing which, in post-apocalyptic gaming and, things like Fallout and stuff like that, where, the EMPs are a part of nuclear bombs. They had to have worked. And yet, for some reason, the tech still works when you find it sometimes. So I'm not going to make it so that, found tech won't work because the EMP destroyed them. There is going to be a lot of technological garbage laying around, as usual for these types of settings. But no, it's not like you're going back to the Stone Age and nothing modern works. I don't find that particularly interesting.
Yeah, the show Revolution, which unfortunately didn't get the ending it deserved. It just sort of fizzled because it didn't get renewed. They did it with some sort of computer virus, which made no tech work, and you ended up with like black powder rifles. But sometimes the tech worked because reasons in the plot, and I do think there's room for that, but it definitely affects the way you tell the story or play the story in this case. So now, are their vehicles still working then? I mean, I don't know how far post-apocalyptic, how far after the apocalypse this is, because I don't think people realize how quickly gas will go bad. And so if you're 4 years past, I mean, chances of that gas being good, if you find a car, are slim to none. So
yeah, gas goes bad in like 6 months.
I didn't know it was that quick. I knew it was, within 5 years, all of it's bad. I just didn't know how quick.
I've actually had some gas go bad on me recently.
Okay.
I had a little jug for the, for my lawnmower. Tried to start up the lawnmower in the springtime last year and nothing. So I had to dump all that and put, get brand new gas and put it in. So it does go bad pretty quick. And there's ways of getting around that. One is you just say, well, somebody's producing gas. You could do that kind of like the Road Warrior, where they were actually literally pumping oil out of the ground and turning it into gas. You could say, hey, somebody's doing that and they're selling it. And there's ways of getting a hold of it so you can get a vehicle and drive around. Another possibility, and I'm still toying with the options on this. I haven't made a definite decision just yet. But another option would be do kind of the Fallout approach, which is that we don't worry about gas because they all used... they all had reactors. They all use fusion reactors. So as long as whatever makes that fusion reactor work is still intact, then you can turn your car on and it will drive.
Yeah. Of course, it also makes it susceptible to shooting it, because I'll go around the Fallout world and shoot the cars just to watch the explosion. Because I'm that guy.
Yep.
So there's room for either. It sounds like in the setting for the DMs to add a little bit of personalized flavor. What is that? Is that accurate, you think?
So that particular question is something I will answer.
Okay.
Before we get to, before the final thing is done, I will have an answer for that particular question. Right now, I'm still kind of weighing the option, and I'm actively working on this thing right now. I'm currently working on mutations. I've got you on one screen, and I've got my document on my other screen. So,
well, it's funded, so if you back it, dear listener, you will get it. And it sounds like it's largely complete, but there's a lot of still minor details to tweak. That you are working on. Is that accurate?
That's mostly accurate.
Does this book come with its own bestiary to start with, just as a sort of primer?
Absolutely.
Inside? What kind of creatures? I mean, I'm showing an excerpt from the book. Unfortunately, dear listener, I grabbed these images from the Kickstarter page, and a lot of times you can't magnify them very well because they obviously don't want piracy. Which is a good thing, when websites do that. But we're just trying to give you an example of what you might see inside of the book. And as you can see, that art is fabulous. And so I'm going to scroll backwards.
By the way, speaking of the art, I'm just mentioning this because it's kind of an issue these days. There is no AI art in this book. Everything is created by a human. Now, like in the picture that we're looking at here, the background is taken from one piece of stock art that I got off. I forget the name of the site. And then the guys who are standing here in the foreground were taken from actual pictures, which I then took into Photoshop and turned them into art. And then the background with the nuclear explosion is another piece of art, which I brought into this, and I kind of composited this piece together. And right now, this is just a mock-up. This is probably not even the final cover, but there's going to be a lot of that type of thing going on. But absolutely, the number one priority in this, as far as the art goes, is it is human produced, whether it's stock art or I've got a couple people who are actually working for me on this, and they're producing original piece of art. It is all human made.
That is a good thing. So for this setting, the bestiary will include a starter, but obviously if you've got an imagination or no other post-apocalyptic worlds, anything you want that's not in there, you could easily convert, or you can bring it from the 5e.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now, there is an asterisk on that.
Okay.
One of the things that I've done is that, so one of the things they did with 5e, and it's probably the biggest design decision that I actually disagree with on 5e, is they made it so that no matter what level you're at, you're about 70% likely to hit every single time you roll, and every time you make an attack roll. And that, I feel, and that's that's different than what it was with both OSR and like 3.5, where your odds of hitting are a lot lower than what they are in 5e. And the argument goes something like this: it's more fun for the player if they roll and they hit most of the time than it is if they make a roll and they miss. And I kind of disagree with that. The reason I disagree with that is like, what's the fun in making an attack roll if you're virtually guaranteed a hit every time you roll, right?
Right.
So,
I agree with you. The try fail something is part of the fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with me. And a lot of people have said that's my number one complaint about 5e is that, it's almost like, why are you even bothering making an attack roll? And in fact, there are some people who are making their own like version of either something similar to 5e or something like lightly based on 5e, where they've eliminated the attack roll entirely and you just roll damage. And it's like, really? Seriously? I mean, we've all seen the barbarian movies where they're sitting there and they're crossing swords, attacking and going back and forth and not landing a single blow, because that's part of the fun, right? And you don't really get that as much. So what I've done with Apocalypse, and another project that I can kind of allude to now, is I've changed the math. If you go into the 5.0, because I didn't even bother putting this into the 5.5 books, you go into the 5.0 DMG, and there's a table. And the table says, okay, if you're trying to make a challenge rating X monster, you probably want the hit points to be this, you want the armor class to be this, you want the damage output to be this, and you want the attack bonus to be this. And you can wiggle that around so you can have like, a lower armor class with more hit points, or more hit points with a lower armor class. You can change it to suit the monster concept, but those are basically those are kind of your baseline. So you could like literally just create a new monster, stick with the baseline, and that's absolutely a valid way of designing the creature. What I've done is I've changed the baseline. I've changed the math so that creatures are harder to hit, which puts some of the fun back in the attack roll. And I've reduced the hit points across the board, because, if they're harder to hit, then you don't want them to have all those hit points. Otherwise, you get back to the point where you're starting to take fun away from it again. They're still balanced about the same, but it puts more of the fun back into the attack roll. The monsters are still 100% 5e compatible, but they'll be using the new mathematical basis as opposed to the old one.
Okay. With this one, are there base classes to start, or are you allowing the players to completely create them?
The players will be completely creating their base class. Like I said before, it's broken up by tiers. So you've got a number of different class abilities that you can take at each level anyway that allows you to take a class ability. And you just go into the tier that you're currently in, 1 through 4, and pick one. Now, some class abilities are going to be like free, like, you want it, take it, you're good to go. Some of them are going to be like, well, this doesn't make sense if you've got, like, say, a low dexterity. So some of them are going to have some requirements similar to how feats work. And that's just kind of the way that's going to work. You're going to go in there and you're going to build your class as you progress. The subclasses are going to be, there are going to be subclasses, and one of the main ideas behind the subclass is it separates the things that should not be combined. For example, sneak attack. You're going to have your sharpshooter subclass, which gets sneak attack, as opposed to rage. You're going to have your rager subclass, which means you can't, it's like crossing streams. You can't have both. And it doesn't make sense to have both anyway, because the rager is kind of the the crazy guy who goes out there and attacks wildly and that sort of thing. It doesn't really mix well with somebody who's precision attacking. So
yeah, there's a different archetype of person that's going to be a berserker, which is what you're describing, versus a marksman. That actually makes perfect sense to me. Now, when you talk about ragers, it made me wonder. One of the things that you see, obviously, in a lot of post-apocalyptic worlds is bandits, right? Because you got to have bad guys. Bandits are easy. Cannibals are easy. You get the radiated creatures and peoples, etc. But when it comes to the bandits, one of the things you see in Fallout is they're all drug addicts. A lot of them are addicted to the stim packs. Mm-hmm. Is that something you factored into this world, or no?
There will be drugs that you can find. You'll be able to take them. Will they be part of the description of all of these? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. Haven't really decided. Haven't written the descriptions yet.
So there's room for individual flavor if that's something they want. Because one of the fun things is anybody that's dealt with people on those drugs, either law enforcement or the military, sometimes the drugs make them feel invincible. So things that should have taken them down don't. And so that fear of, holy crap, I just shot that guy 5 times in the game and he's still charging me. It adds a little bit of a pucker factor to an engagement when, in theory, he should be dead already by numbers. It's that X factor in a combat module, which I think can be fun to play with. Okay. We've talked about the game. There's a lot, it sounds like, that is up in the air because you're finishing it. Is this going to be a system that's a one and done, or are you going to support it with more content added and added and added?
Okay, so currently I am doing monthly support for the Daring and Dread campaign setting and the Reign of Discordia campaign setting. I would love to do the same thing with Apocalypse and put out regular support for it. A lot of that's going to come, frankly, down to sales. If it sells well, it's going to get supported. If it doesn't sell well, it's no. I think it will sell well, to be honest with you, because the genre is it was the second, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe it was the second genre that they actually did with role-playing. First D&D came out, which is fantasy, and then came Gamma World. And if you're somebody who really knows your history, you're going to say, no, you're missing one, which is done by James Ward. Metamorphosis Alpha, I believe is what it's called, which is a lot like, it's basically like Gamma World, except aboard a spaceship. So it's still post-apocalyptic. Point being that the post-apocalyptic genre has been a part of gaming for almost as long as gaming itself has been around. And because of that, I believe that there's a pretty big audience there. So I think that it's likely to continue selling, which means it will get support.
And by support, do you mean more modules? Do you mean more monsters, creatures, classes, etc.? Or are you talking about, because I know you write novels as well, are you going to be writing content in the world you created?
I'm talking gaming material. I would love to do some fiction. Fiction's a whole different animal, though. It's a lot harder to sell fiction than it is gaming stuff, especially if you're known more for gaming than as a fiction author. I found that to be true with my own stuff. I found that to be true with other people who are in kind of a similar position. And if you're an indie writer and you're just writing fiction, it's very, very difficult for them to break in and actually find a readership. So for that reason, and I have done a post-apocalyptic novel in the past. I'd love to do one. It's just a question of, do I have the time for this? Well, really, that's most that's most of it. Will I have the time to actually write fiction for it? And the answer to that is I honestly don't know. But as for gaming material, if it is supported, it will be supported with supplements, be they adventures or monsters or deep dives in places and setting, additional rules, that type of thing.
Okay, well, I just know some of the early gaming magazines had short stories kind of set in the world with some of the, characters or some of the lore, and that was always fun for me to read some of those. Looking back on it. So okay, so obviously one of the things with Kickstarters, it's backed, so it is a guarantee if you're backing it at this point. You're going to be listening to this Sunday or Monday because it ends I think in 9 days from when it'll air.
5 days. 5 days from now.
Okay, well then,
so once you put this up, there's about 2 days left.
Well, then I'll put it up sooner because we're recording this on a Saturday. I'll put it up Saturday for both of them. Easy peasy. But so, what are there stretch goals that are you're pushing for at the end? Are there what can they expect from the game?
Okay, so we hit our first stretch goal, which was I'm going to add a section in the book for guidelines on settlements. Basically what that is if you've played Fallout 4, you could set up defenses for places and settlements can grow, or if the settlement gets sacked, they can get they can be reduced in size and that type of thing. And you can either use that for your home settlement if you have one, or it can be more of hey, we're going to be traveling the wasteland and helping a whole bunch of different settlements, defend themselves against raiders and mutants and, that sort of thing. So that stretch goal we've already hit. The next one would be guidelines in the book for doing the American wasteland in a hex crawl type of situation. In other words, you're going to get a lot of tables, tables with monsters, random monsters, tables with, here's things you might find there, here's the people you might meet, that sort of thing. And that's something I did a lot of with Last Fleet to Vega, because Last Fleet to Vega, we kind of described that as a star crawl. Because it's meant, that one's meant to be kind of a planet of the week. And so rather than saying, here is where everything is, instead it's when you get to this new place, roll on a bunch of tables and it'll come up, it'll throw a bunch of ideas at you, and it's up to you to figure out how you want to put all that together, or if you want to use everything that you rolled and while you're putting it together. And so the hex crawl for Apocalypse would be kind of a similar type of thing. It would be to kind of help the GM who wants to do the sandbox style campaign as opposed to the story based, or maybe have elements of both.
So you're giving some flexibility to the DM whether they want to do this almost like a one shot, or whether they want to build a campaign in this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I know
that would be the stretch goal. So if we get to 2,000, we're about 1,500 right now. If we get to 2,000 by the end of this thing, then we're going to do the hex crawl.
So do you have a mechanic, or is it a stretch goal to add a mechanic for creating your own faction? Because I'm thinking if you've seen the movie The Postman, where they have the Pony Express be recreated.
I've actually never watched that.
It's an okay movie, but the idea is that some of the old organizations that worked in the time before technology might come back, and so you could create these organizations. You have the caravans. That's where you have Wells Fargo. The bank actually started as they were armored wagons that were protected. That's where you get that one. I'm drawing a blank on it now, but there's that one, the Pinkertons, for instance. Those kinds of organizations existed because they were solving problems in sort of pre-technology times, and organizations like that, if not that, will come back, I imagine, as people try to sort out.
There will be organizations detailed. As far as hex crawl type tables for creating organizations, I don't plan on doing that, although it's an interesting idea, and I might just take that as something I want to add to it.
Okay.
I'm open to ideas. Let's put it that way.
The last question is, I know with some gaming content and some IPs, when people want to do content. So I have seen takedown videos on people that played RPGs on Twitch, for instance, because the owner of the game did not want them using the content in that way. Is because this is coming out through Darrin Drader Designs. If someone buys this and they run it on their Twitch table, are they allowed to do this? Are you going to let that happen, or?
I'm not going to expressly forbid anybody from doing that, but I'm also not going to expressly authorize it either. Um, Mainly because the way that just because the way IP law works is that if you don't defend your IP, you lose it. So basically, the short answer is I'm not going to be actively looking for it or going after people. um, and that kind of also fits in with my general philosophy with the other products I've run. I've got I've got open world licenses for Reign of Discordia and for Daring and Dread, which means that if you're like an independent publisher, you can use my open world license and put your own products that are compatible with those settings out. I may end up doing the same thing with this. But as far as running a game, it's like, yeah, I'm not coming after you.
Well, I just know, like, sometimes building community requires putting it out there. And if you've got some organizations that will, put the smackdown, like Nintendo's notorious doing that for gamers on Twitch. And I get why, like you said, with the IP law, you could do that, or you could take the Star Wars approach as, oh, well, they're not selling my IP, they're selling their time, and it just happens to be building the Stormtrooper armor or whatever. Like there's legal nuances for all of it. It really just comes down to the business. And I like the idea with gaming building community, because that's how you grow the hobby, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
it's an interesting point, because like Modifius, they actually have a part of their website where if you're running their game, they will actually put a link up to your game on their website.
Oh, cool.
So, I'm kind of more in alignment with their philosophy.
Okay.
If you see what I'm saying.
Absolutely. So if they took this world and somebody, because we talked about open world license, if somebody took your property and said, I really like this game, I want to write a novel in it, and assuming they go through the legal processes, which that's a whole nother episode, would you have any preference on, like, okay, if you're going to write in this world, I want to see a story in this area of the country?
Not necessarily,
because almost everyone does Vegas because it's easy. Like it's overdone, I think.
I mean, like like I said before, I've got a post-apocalyptic novel out there. It's called Legacy of Ruin for the Nuclear Sunset setting, which is something I did for another publisher, and I don't know the rights to. So personally, I want to see stuff in the Pacific Northwest because that's where I live.
Okay.
And that's where that novel was set. But if you live in, say, the American Southeast, absolutely do it in that area. And it's going to be, it's going to be supported by the description of that area in the main book too. So you'll have that to work with.
At any point in time, do you expand, and then we'll wrap this up. At any point in time, do you plan on expanding to cover what happened in the rest of the world?
Okay, so I've gotten this question before. And for me, I feel comfortable doing North America because I've been to most regions of North America. I've seen it. I'm familiar with it. Living in the United States, I know the culture, et cetera, et cetera. It would be very difficult for me, I feel, to do, say, post-apocalyptic Australia, just where Mad Max is set. If somebody came to me and said, hey, I live in Australia and I would really like to do a post-apocalyptic setting book that goes with this game set in Australia, I would most likely say, yeah, let's do it. So the answer to that question really comes down to who comes to me with what ideas and if they're the right person to write it. I wouldn't be the right person to do Europe. I've never been there. But So that's
now I'm picturing like irradiated monster kangaroos attacking you.
yeah.
There was a video that just launched today because we're recording this on Saturday. I'm going to go ahead and just launch both of those episodes, intro to season 6, and then this one today when we're done. Somebody did a parachute landing, and they're civilian parachutists, so they're not like military, and they happen to just be landing in the middle of a random field with their parachute company because they tend to jump in groups. And randomly, just kangaroo just hops up to them and just starts punching them as they're, trying to disentangle themselves from their parachute. And if you told me that, I'd be like, okay, sure, whatever, buddy. But they filmed it.
Okay, so I have to ask you a question though. Was that real or was that AI? Because these days, it's hard to tell the difference.
It wasn't tagged as AI in YouTube general, which is where I saw the video. Generally, YouTube will tag them as AI. And it requires you if it is. And if it's like Sora, they leave the tag. Although at this point, you have to question everything about reality because even ones I thought I vetted turned out to not have been true. Or they're just like they're parts of it were true, which is why I believed it. And then they distorted. I don't know. It's a crazy world we live in. We're post-truth society, which is one hell of a like cyberpunk concept right there. Unfortunately, we're living in it. So,
well, I hate to admit this, but Cyberpunk got a lot right. The only thing we really don't have right now is neural interfaces.
We have some of that with pigs. They've started working on it. Elon Musk has.
Oh, I know that. I know they're working on it. I know Elon's got they've implanted chips in people's heads that they can actually use to work the computer with.
Cybernetic limbs are making. What got me is there's a funny meme from Cyberpunk 2047, I think is the name of it, where it's like, what radicalized you? And it's like, this did, and it shows a picture from that game where the gas prices are like a third of what we're paying right now on the street signs. But okay, so if people wanted to buy this game and they want to review it, because we encourage people to review content. Are they able to review it on Kickstarter? I know you sell through DriveThruRPG. Is that where they would have to go to review it later? How is that going to work?
Well, I mean, anybody can review anything they want on like a dedicated reviews platform.
Right.
But if you go to DriveThruRPG, there is an option to either leave a star rating or leave a review. And so that would be, my preference is do it on DriveThruRPG, especially if you have something positive to say. I will say this, right now I'm kind of enjoying a 4.3 out of 5 stars at DriveThruRPG, which not everybody has that.
So this is the part, dear listener, I'll remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right games. So do your part. It really does make a difference. I know you can leave reviews on Kickstarter, but because you do plan on selling this after the Kickstarter launches, will it be on DriveThruRPG or are you going to sell it elsewhere as well?
It's absolutely going to be on DriveThruRPG.
Now, I know obviously DriveThruRPG, easy peasy, you're going to be a digital file. Are there going to be paperback or hardback options, or will it just be digital?
There will be a print-on-demand hardback option through lulu.com, which is where I do all of my print-on-demand. So right now, you'd be able to go there and I'm sorry, what?
They do quality production when it comes to books.
Yeah, they really do. They really do. It's top-notch. That's why I use them. That and the fact that they're a lot easier to work with than some of the other options. So, for instance, right now, you could go to lulu.com and do a search for either Darrin Drader or do a search for Daring and Dread campaign setting, and you will find the Daring and Dread campaign setting, and you could purchase that as a POD. I've also got Reign of Discordia up as a POD. And the idea, I'm actually going to be adding more titles as time goes by. And the next one going up is going to be Last Fleet to Vega, and Apocalypse is going to be after that. And then I'm also going to be, and those are all hardbacks. Some of the support products are also going to be going up here in the near future as paperbacks.
Okay. So take it. Are you familiar with Troll Lord Games?
Absolutely.
So you're not going to do what Steve Jackson, no, Steve, what's his last name? Is it Jackson? What Steve, Chanel, there we go. He did. He was so dedicated to quality production that he built his own print factory to print his own games. But
yes,
he's
he did.
Paper nerd, so he bought the land and everything.
Oh, I know. I've actually been following it, and last year, I didn't meet him, but I met somebody else from Troll Lord Games. And we were talking about that, and they said they don't quite have it all set up and ready to go, but I'm kind of working with Total Party Kill Games as a partner. We aren't really we're not completely set up just yet, but what we're talking about doing is we're talking about having the things that are currently available as POD, doing a print run through Troll Lord Games and selling it through Total Party Kill Games. And he'll be going to various conventions throughout the United States, and he'll have my books. So that's one of the things that's in the works.
Cool. So obviously, if you want to back it, we'll have all the links to the Kickstarter. If you listen to this years from now, we'll link to the Drive-Thru RPG where you can find Darrin Drader designs and you can buy it there. But if people wanted to follow you, and the links will be in the show notes, where can they follow you at?
You can follow me on Facebook. I have to be 100% honest. I am opinionated. I am fairly liberal, and you'll have to put up with some of my BS. So if that's not something you're interested in, or if you're the argumentative troll type, it probably is not going to work out too well. You can follow me on Blue Sky. You can follow me as a publisher on Drive-Thru RPG. Those are probably the best options.
Now, I don't care that you're liberal, but what is your stance on pineapples on pizza?
Oh, it's absolutely aberrant. It should not exist.
You could be the dirtiest, reddest commie out there, and if you agree with me on this one, we can be friends. All right. And we'll link
hold on. So your position on pineapple on pizza is the same as mine, then?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay. I agree. I agree with you. We can be friends if we agree on that.
Yeah. So this is the part where I would like to remind you, you can follow us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, Blasters and Blades Podcast at gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section this for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will buy that coffee brand coffee until they get high on their own supply. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee, the link is in the show notes. The discount code is Podcast Grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. If you're outside of the continental United States, or you just want a little bit of a free shipping thing going on, they do sell on Amazon. We get nothing there, but we're coffee addicts, so we're helping you out. They've got hot chocolate and tea there as well, if that's more your jam. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. Thank you for coming back for season 6. For my absent and overworked crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, and this was a lot of fun. I'm going to have to look into finding a way if I can back this game, because this sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know anything about 5e, but I like post-apocalyptic worlds.
Well, hey, the nice thing is that if you've got this book, you don't need to know anything about 5e. All the rules are there.
All right, perfect. And with that, we're going to hit the end button, people.